Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We are starting our weekend off right with watches and batting lead off. I'm using a baseball metaphor to describe a watch dedicated to regatta, launched in 2023 from Tudor. This is the Pelagos FXD Chronograph Alinghi Red Bull Racing. So it is a battery of firsts that represents the alignment of Tudor with the Alinghi Red Bull Racing Syndicate that will contest the America's Cup. So what is famous about these firsts? Well, a big one, this is Tudor's first use of a carbon composite case. Another is that, because this is part of the FXD series, this is Tudor's first use of an integrated bar lug system on a chronograph. Now the watch is actually tri-material, so 43 millimeters in diameter. The hardware for the crowns, as well as the bezel, is titanium. The case is carbon composite, and then the case back, as well as the movement canister, which is the inner structure of the case, made of stainless steel. You can see the Syndicate's logo on the back, Alinghi Racing and Red Bull both. Taking a quick look at the dial, you can see it features the same blue color as the Syndicate's gear, branded merchandise, and boat. We have a bezel that looks like it might be a diving bezel at first glance, but then you realize that it is bidirectional, and that it's a mission timer style countdown bezel that starts from 60 and ends at 0. It does feature a ceramic insert, and you're going to be happy to know that the watch features no shortage of luminescence, and you can time two events concurrently using the chronograph as well as that bezel. The dial, also twin register, exhibiting one of the differences between the original Breitling B01 and this Tudor adaptation of it, which is called the MT5813. Breitling uses a 30-minute chronograph register. Tudor modifies it to have a 45-minute register. Other changes including replacing the mobile stud index with a free-sprung balance a la Tudor and Rolex, replacing Breitling's metal hairspring with an anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, and of course, chronometer certified like the Breitling. Vertical clutch and column wheel with particularly appealing column wheel action. I've always felt the B01 architecture has one of the best column wheel feels in the business, on par with Longa and Zenith and Rolex in that regard. 200 meters water resistant, but again, it's not strictly a dive watch since the bezel can move both to and fro. There's a quick set in hacking. The strap's actually made in France by Julien Faure in the Saint-Étienne region. And on the wrist, you can see, although it does take some figuring to get one of these things on, once it's there, its use of Velcro means that the fine-tuning adjustment is effectively infinite, so you will be able to get this to fit flush and comfortably. And being mostly sapphire, titanium, and carbon, it's fairly light on the wrist as well. A wonderful and offbeat watch from Tudor, and one that I really enjoy. A fun watch to wear and a fun watch to own. All right, that is our leadoff hitter. But we've got our cleanup hitter coming now. Your heaviest hitter in baseball, your guy who can hit the ball hardest, is always your fourth place hitter. They call it cleanup. And this is definitely the heaviest hitter I have on the show today. Originally shown back in 2010, the Breguet Type 22 didn't actually hit the market until 2012 because of the challenge of implementing all of its technologies and features. And that's saying something when Breguet has limitless resources from Lamagna and the Swatch Group. So here you can see we have a 72,000 vibration per hour, 10 hertz escapement. Very similar to what you'll find on the Classique Chronométrie that won the GPHG Aiguille d'Or. On the back, you can see the oscillator. The escapement, you can see, is primarily made of silicon and almost as thin as a spider web. The hairspring, also silicon and anti-magnetic. Free sprung, automatic winding with a 40-hour power reserve, and with a 72,000 vibration per hour rate, it's potentially accurate to better than 1 second a day. The chronograph can register 1/20th of a second, so it has very high resolution, and it makes 30-second circuits the dial. Like old Lamagna calibers, including the one on which this movement is distantly based, it has a central 60-minute register. It is also a flyback, so you can reset and restart without first stopping. And unlike a lot of those Lamagnas, which feature a 24-hour hand that's mechanically geared to the 12-hour hand, this is an actual independent second time zone. We also have something else that a lot of those old Lamagna 1340 and 1315 calibers don't have, which is true stop seconds. And then the watch is 100 meters water resistant, something rarely seen on pilots' watches, with a bidirectional bezel that can be used for timing, as you also time a separate interval with the chronograph. No shortage of luminescence, including on the bezel index and some of the sub-registers. The watch is big. There's no getting around that. It's too big for me. It's about 18 millimeters thick, and on my wrist you could see that it has a huge wingspan. It's a pilot's watch, but it's for big pilots. Not a big pilot's watch, but a big pilot's watch. You can see the thickness of it. You can see the breadth of it. I think your wrist should probably be 17, maybe 18 centimeters circumference before wearing this. But if you can wear it, what a do-it-all. Mega watch. I mean, frankly, something Richard Mille would charge real estate prices to own had something like this been created by Richard Mille. Now, let's say you want a big, bold watch, but you're on a budget. Well, that's okay. Big, bold, Bremont and Bamford. They're right up your alley. This is a 2024 launch, DLC-coated steel, 500-piece limited edition, the Bremont Bamford Aurora. It's based on the Supermarine S500 GMT, and so it's part of the Supermarine family, which means it's 500 meters water resistant, and then you can see it's got a helium escape valve on the side, and what appears at first glance like it might be a GMT bezel, it's actually unidirectional like a dive bezel, so provided you just mentally keep track of the fact that you're not looking at minutes, you're looking at intervals of 5 minutes with a 24-hour scale. You can use this as a dive bezel, and I'll show you just how well this Aurora Borealis-inspired watch glows. The full bezel is luminescent. It is sapphire capped, which gives it both durability and a lustrous, luxurious aesthetic. And if you just remember that those intervals on the bezel are 5-minute intervals, you're going to be just fine using this as a dive timer. And of course, we've got the sandwich dial, which is California style, a la 1930s Panerai, with the Roman numerals on the top, Arabic numerals on the bottom, and then a stencil over a solid disc of lume. Now, it's a no date, so you can see it's a clean, balanced dial. London, yes, it is a British-built watch, and it is timed to ISO 3159 chronometer standards inside of Britain. So if you want to support British watchmaking, great way to do it. The triptych case design, off-centered crown for ambidextrous use. A really superb 120 click action that's both precise and crisp. On the back, Supermarine, best known for the World War II Spitfire fighter, was actually known in its earlier eras as a manufacturer of high-performance float planes, including record setters. So that's what you've got on the back. Remember, I said it's chronometer adjusted, not COSC, but to the ISO 3159 that underpins the COSC, because remember, this is all done in England. Then we can also see anti-shock. The movement spacers inside the case are actually rubber. So this is a very shock-resistant watch that's difficult to damage even under abusive conditions. Anti-magnetic, it has a Faraday soft iron cage around the movement to make it highly resistant to magnetic flux. We have a nubuck strap, so a wonderful sanded lower grain leather, the top layer removed by sanding to remove pores, scars, and imperfections in the hide. You can see this Aurora Borealis-inspired watch has a strap to match, DLC black pin buckle, and inside we have a Sellita SW330 in chronometer grade with 50-hour automatic winding power reserve and the independent 24 and 12-hour formats. Throw it on the wrist. Big watch, but not overpowering. I could wear this, and I actually like the look of it. It's designed to be stark. It's designed to be a standout. It's not designed to be a watch for a shy man. I do love the green and the black. I think that's an effective combo. And if any of you guys have seen my recent social media posts about my newest bicycle, it's actually that combo. It's black and green. Maybe I need to accessorize. Guys, let me know in the description. But as you can see, incredibly, it does fit underneath the cuff, at least this cuff. In the world of sports watches, there's only a couple of original gangster integrated bracelet models. Everyone wishes they had been in on the act during the 70s, including companies like Christopher Ward that didn't even exist back then. But the Girard-Perregaux Laureato is the real deal. Launched in 1975, initially as a quartz watch, it's had a powerful comeback the last few years at newly independent Girard-Perregaux as a mechanical watch, and that's exactly what we have right here. This is the GP Laureato Laureato, rose gold, and onyx. So you've got a combination of rose gold or pink gold, as they describe it, with a black onyx dial. You've got the little logo that is the image of the tourbillon with 3 golden bridges, and then you can see that the edge of the bridges actually match the design of the hands. The faceted bezel of the Laureato, one of the 2 design icons of Girard-Perregaux. One is the triple golden bridge tourbillon, and then this bezel is the other, which is why it's echoed in the faceting of the crown. A thin watch, it's under 11 millimeters thick. It's 50 millimeters, or 50 meters, I should say, water resistant with a screw down crown. So 50 meters with a screw down is safe for surface swimming, so you can wear this over the summer. You have the larger caliber 1800 here rather than the earlier 3300. The 3300, I believe, is about 26 and change, whereas this is about 30 millimeters on the nose, so it better fills the case back of a large watch. It also has more power reserve at 54 versus the old movement's 46. Nicely decorated. The bevels and the stripes, the perlage and the polished screws are particularly attractive, but really what I like most is this beautiful symmetrical bridge for the solarized mainspring barrel, and you can see how broad and gleaming and bright and rounded those bevels are. Really nicely done. A watch that looks and feels the part of a super premium timepiece. In the hand, it's incredibly hefty, and throwing it on the wrist, I appreciate that it is a very thin watch and that the ends of the case arc down to make it more compatible with a small wrist. You may be able to wear this watch on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. Once more, mine is 16, and I find that it's a great match, a lovely watch and an agreeable companion. If you want something just a little bit more luxurious, maybe a bit more special and rare than a standard Laureato, this is the way to go. Here's a watch that seems neither fish nor fowl. In fact, it's named after one of the 4 traditional elements of folklore. So earth, air, fire, and water. And of course, this is the Armin Strom manual water. Launched in 2010, it's a 100-piece limited edition in steel that has some sports watch qualities, such as, for example, its robust balance architecture, luminescence, and a steel case. But it also has a lot of dress watch elements that we'll go over in a moment. The watch is only about 12.5 millimeters thick, so it's thinner than you think. But 43.5 millimeters in diameter makes it fairly large. It has the Armin Strom chin, which is intended as a platform for customization. Think a small crest or initials. The case profile is distinctive with stepped out lugs and vertical satination rather than longitudinal. The dial is one and the same as the caliber AMW11 made in-house, and exquisitely so. Note the presence of circular Côte de Genève. We have beveling on the edge of the bridges. We have an intermediate wheel. We have the minute wheel with minute wheel pinion. We have the hour wheel next to that. And then below all of that, the cannon pinion turns the minute wheel. Now the watch has a barrel that's visible below all of this, and on the reverse side, you can see it's a large movement designed to fill the case. 5-day power reserve, 18,000 vibration per hour beat rate. Note the presence of a full balance bridge with a free sprung balance for precise setting and shock resistance. And then there is an overcoil hairspring. Note the adjustment in 5 positions like a chronometer. The overcoil allows it to keep consistent time in different positions. Solarized crown wheel, solarized ratchet wheel, circular Côte de Genève, freehand engraving on this bridge surrounding the escapement and balance. You can see it's the upper mounting point or upper pivot point for the center wheel. It's effectively a very narrow and long train bridge. And the watch does have that 5-day manual wind power reserve. On the wrist, take a look, hornback alligator strap. It is an Armin Strom factory strap. Very robust and luxurious. It's the kind of thing you expect to see on a Royal Oak offshore. The watch is broad at about 54 millimeters across the wrist, so I think it's probably a little bit too large for me, but you be the judge. If you think this fits well and your wrist is my size, game on. Also take note, although it does look thick, it's really quite slim and it will slide underneath the dress cuff. A winner on every front. This is a rare watch from a cool brand run by 2 really cool people, Serge Michel and Claude Griesler. They're enthusiasts, they're engineers, they are watch entrepreneurs, and they've been at it now since the late 2000s when they took over from brand founder Armin Strom and converted the company from its previous focus on ornate engraved and skeletonized ETA movements towards a new era in which Armin Strom has become a manufacturer of great esteem in the independent watchmaking space. Speaking of independent watchmakers of great esteem, FP Journe, and here we've got something super special. This is a black label Calendrier. The Octa Calendrier, discontinued after 2015, was an annual calendar based on the 5-day power reserve Octa automatic movement. And you can see on the reverse of the watch, this is an exceptionally rare one because it has the older French-made Eleanor case, but it is black label, a series that only launched in 2008. So it was really only 1 year when these cases and this series overlapped. And while it's not impossible for an Eleanor case to show up a few months or even a year or two down the line, rest assured there are probably few enough Eleanor cased 40mm Octa Calendrier black labels in the world to count on two hands. So 40mm in diameter, black label is this exclusive combination of a platinum case and a black and gold dial for this series, which can only be bought at Journe stores and then only by those who have a prior purchase history with Journe. And scuttlebutt on the street is that you now have to spend $400,000 with Journe to be qualified for black label. Now it's a retrograding annual calendar, so retrograde date, annual calendar, one adjustment per year during the jump from February to March. Octa automatic, you can see we have a black and gold dial, a platinum case, and then a movement which is solid gold. Rose gold 18 karat for the bridges and plates, 22 karat for the rotor. Well, it's rated for 5 days of chronometric power reserve. The fact is it'll run for about 7 days before it stops. The absolute power reserve is about 160 hours. This one has a rare feature. It was ordered with a factory full deployant clasp, something that's generally a significant upcharge item costing well into 4 figures. Throw it on the wrist and you can see the 40mm case is traditionally beautiful and versatile. It's a thin watch and it's also a fairly narrow watch across the wrist at 48mm. My wrist wears it well. I think this is viable on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. Again, 40mm is the case size. And this is on a really nice strap, which is actually rubberized leather with a tritone, we'll call it a quad tone, black, white, red, and blue. Really nice, and one of the most compelling combinations of Journe model, series, size, and strap I've ever encountered. All right, this is arguably the most horologically significant watch you're going to see today. The Freak 2. Effectively, the second generation Freak launched in 2005. The Freak 28,800 vibrations per hour made some changes to the original model. Here we have the dual Ulysse replacing the original dual direct movement, and you can see it has those symmetrical toothed escape wheel teeth. That's how you know the difference between a true Freak 1 and a Freak 1.5 and a Freak 2. You'll have those little teeth on every single wheel rather than irregularly shaped wheels. You can also see that the dual Ulysse is made of silicon, which through its Sigitech subsidiary, Ulysse Nardin would eventually bring in-house. It features the same bezel setting mechanism, baguette movement, and carousel tourbillon of the original Freak. And you'll even note that the balance is designed with a free-sprung architecture for precise setting. So a carousel designed by the Dane Bonne Bonnickson in the 1890s was designed to be effectively the same mechanism as a tourbillon, rotating the escapement with respect to gravity, but in a more durable form. So you have a separate drivetrain that rotates the carriage and then another one to drive the escapement. So I'm able to do this. This is another feature of the Freak 2. There's a little lift lock. When you lift it, you unlock the bezel that is used for setting. On the original Freak, it was too easy to brush the bezel and change the time. Here you can see I'm using the bezel to set the time, the baguette movement, which includes the train, the escapement, and the balance. This is the minute hand. That below it is the hour hand. Push this little lock back down. Now it's fixed. Lots to love on the dial side. You can see that the index for the minute and the index for the hour, they're actually satinated on their top and finished on their sides. There's beveling on the edges of the bridge, which features stripes across its top, and we have fire-blued screws. There is a sapphire hour ring with metallized numerals, and you can see Ulysse Nardin's corporate blue, evocative of their marine chronometers of the 19th and early 20th century. And along those lines, we have an individual number plate on the side. By the way, the watch only 12mm thick, so you have that individual number plate held by fired screws. We have lugs that are stepped out from the case band with a little bit of a teardrop undertuck and a fluted edge. We have a full deployant clasp, again the anchor logo reminding of Ulysse Nardin's nautical heritage. So Carol Forestier-Casapi, later of Cartier, later of Tag Heuer, created an idea in the 90s for a watch that had a rotating baguette movement at center with a mainspring that sat around the edge. Ulysse Nardin ultimately purchased the rights, modified it, and that became the Freak. You could see that fully encompassing mainspring on the back. Now here we actually wind it using the case back, and little windows allow us to see the coiling of the mainspring, which when fully energized gives us 7 days of power reserve. You can also see that the case back has a beautiful blue wave motif, the UN anchor, solarization at the center over the bearing with blued screws, and that the little windows allowing you to see into the mainspring. They're beveled on their edges and satinated, or snailed, I should say, across their tops. Turning back to the dial side, the Freak also got larger in its second generation again. The original Freak, 2001. This Freak, 2005. So the original Freak was 42.5. This is 44.5, but still very, very thin. And the watch has a unique feature that's easy to miss at first glance. There's a reason Freaks were moisture and dust resistant only, not truly water resistant until the Freak Cruiser of 2013. Tell me when you see it. Notice that the upper pivot of the tourbillon actually protrudes through the sapphire. So having a hole in the sapphire, the watch is only moisture and water resistant. So that is the trick that thins out the watch. Taking a quick look at it on the wrist, it's difficult for me to wear because it's on a strap that's not broken in and is fully integrated, but I could absolutely wear this watch. Freak 1, Freak 2, it does fit. And again, the thinness is a big part of the appeal. If your wrist is my size or larger, you're going to find it fits down the barrel. You could see here just that the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist. It's a graceful, elegant, and historically important watch on so many levels. I cannot give it an in-depth treatment. Just think of this. I've described the Freak as the watch of our entire post-2000 era, and I stand by that. That said, the most mind-blowing watch that you're going to see today is the one I'm about to bring on screen, made in only 10 pieces for 2021. This is the Bethune Dream Watch 5 Tourbillon Season 1, a 10-piece limited edition in fired grade 5 titanium and sapphire. This seashell-like watch was conceived with the American recording artist Kasim Dean, or Swizz Beatz, and he has a remarkably refined taste in watches. A young, rich recording artist, you could probably forgive him being a little bit exuberant with the design, but he went with the purist's choice, favoring a relatively understated combination of materials in titanium and sapphire, no gems, no frills, visible movement and mechanism at the expense of other elements. Here you could see that the entire disc array for the jumping hour is completely visible, and it is an incredibly revealing mechanism that brings the movement to the fore. In effect, the engineering is the essence of this watch. It is the source of its style. You also have, though it's easy to miss, a spherical moon phase that is 1/2 blued steel, 1/2 white palladium, and has an adjustment interval of once every 122 years. Now I got to open up the strap on this so you can see the case back, but rest assured, it'll be worth the wait. On the reverse side, once again, we have transparency. Twin mainspring barrels and a visible barrel bridge, everything finished to the highest standard possible. 4 days of power reserve in spite of the jump hour, the moon phase, and the energy-intensive tourbillon. The tourbillon, by the way, a 30-second tourbillon, spinning at twice the speed of a conventional tourbillon regulator. It also oscillates at 36,000 vibrations per hour, and as you can see, uses de Bethune's own design for a silicon escape wheel to reduce the total mass. The wheel is made of white gold and blued titanium, and the entire assembly has a mass of 0.18 grams, 18/100ths of a gram. It is the lightest tourbillon currently in production, and at de Bethune, tourbillon regulators are supposed to have chronometric purpose, which means they need to make the watch a better timekeeper, not just more spectacular. And at de Bethune, timing tolerances quoted for their tourbillon, generally between 1/3 and 1 second gained per day. Don't be afraid of the stated size of 58 millimeters. It's 58 down the wrist, but it is not 58 across the wrist. It's only 47 across the wrist. So you can see how much clearance I have on each side. Even a small wrist, possibly even a lady's wrist, can pull this off. And they did things right, putting the time telling end closer to the hand rather than where it might disappear underneath the cuff. If you have any reservations about a blue case, like what happens if it gets scratched, rest assured, because it is a fired titanium and not a PVD or a CVD, when the watch goes back for service, de Bethune obviously removes the movement and the sapphires. It refires the case to restore the blue oxidation. This is truly the stuff of dreams, hence the name Dream Watch 5 Tourbillon. If you love this or any watch you saw on today's episode, reach out to us at tmosso@the1916company.com.